And I briefed all of the leadership of the plans to get them back into chambers. That would have been call number 3 with Speaker Pelosi.
So you didn't have one call, you didn't have 2 calls, you had 3 calls. So Speaker Pelosi's comments that she didn't speak to you are inaccurate.
That is correct, sir.
Today we're here to discuss the security failures that occurred on January 6, 2021, and how we can prevent these failures from occurring again. I want to dive into the questions, Chief Son. In your transcribed interview, you mentioned that you met with the House Sergeant at Arms regarding the National Guard prior to January 6th. Is that correct?
Yes, sir.
And who was the House Sergeant at Arms leading up to and on January 6th?
That would be Paul Irving.
And the House Sergeant at Arms is appointed by who?
It was appointed at that time by Speaker Pelosi.
And in your transcribed interview, you mentioned that when you first brought up the National Guard to the House Sergeant at Arms in the days leading up to January 6th, that Mr. Irving said he, quote, didn't like the optics, end quote. Is that correct?
That is correct. He referenced being concerned for optics.
And on January 6th, when you went to Mr. Irving to get his approval to call in the Guard, Mr. Irving said he would, quote, run it up the chain. Is that correct?
Yes, sir. That was a telephone call. I didn't see him in person when I first made that request.
The House Sergeant at Arms is considered probably the most senior security official on the House side. When Mr. Irving says he has to, quote, run it up the chain, end quote, what did that mean?
I took that to mean his leadership chain.
And who would be his leadership chain? If he's functionally the most senior security official on the House side, correct? That's
his title. That's part of the title, the senior law enforcement official for the House of Representatives. But he would have been referring to the leadership team that goes up to Speaker Pelosi.
So the political leadership team, meaning elected officials, not another security official. Is that
that is correct, sir? He's the top security official for the House.
So running up the chain would most likely, in your opinion, is through the Speaker's office and possibly to Speaker Pelosi?
That would be where it ends, yes.
Okay, so let's park that there, and then let's jump to a second set here. In a press conference on January 7th, Speaker Pelosi called for your resignation on national television. Speaker Pelosi also stated that she had not talked to you since the initial breach of the Capitol. But according to your transcribed interview, you were on the phone with Speaker Pelosi a few times. Can you explain that discrepancy?
Yeah, that is correct. I spoke to Speaker Pelosi 3 times that evening, and she went on national TV and said I'd never spoken to her, but I spoke to her 3 times. The three times were the first time when I went over to brief Vice President Pence at the secure location. I'd called House Sergeant at Arms Irving, told him I was going over to brief the Vice President. I was also going over to do a personal assessment of the Capitol. At that point, things were getting under control. Went over there, briefed him on when we can get them back into chambers with Mr. Irving being fully aware. He said he wanted to get Speaker Pelosi on the phone. He made a phone call from his cell phone at approximately 5:34, where I first briefed Speaker Pelosi. The second call was when I left that location. As I was walking away, I met up with Mr. Stenger, and we started walking over to the Senate to go brief the Senate. When Jennifer Hemingway, I believe it was Jennifer Hemingway, handed me the cell phone, and it was Emily Barrett's cell phone calling her, and it was Speaker Pelosi on the other line. This is my second call with Speaker Pelosi, questioning the information I'd given to Vice President Pence about when we can get back into chambers. I assured her that information was correct. I could get them back into chambers by 7 p.m., and the call ended. That was call number 2. Call number 3 was 6:25 p.m. I was over at the Senate from the secure location, from where the Senate had been sequestered, and on a cell phone using Robert Karam's cell phone, they dialed leadership, who was over off-site at a secure location, and I briefed all of the leadership of the plans to get them back into chambers. That would have been call number 3 with Speaker Pelosi.
So you didn't have 1 call, you didn't have 2 calls, you had 3 calls. So Speaker Pelosi's comments that she didn't speak to you are inaccurate.
That is correct, sir.
Let me shift gears and go back as it relates to the optics of bringing people up to Capitol Hill and running things up the chain of command, ultimately to the Speaker's office. Do you think Speaker Pelosi's office or Speaker Pelosi herself politicized Capitol security?
I have no idea on that, sir.
Okay. Any other clarifications you'd like to make as it relates to Speaker Pelosi's comments that you didn't speak to her?
I just, wish she had considered that, wish she had considered some of the stuff that I've faced and the efforts I went through to bring in the outside resources on that day before she called for her resignation.
Thank you very much for being here. I yield back.
Since that interview, to go back and check the record. So when did you speak with the former president on January 6th? Did you talk to the former president before, during, or after the attack on the Capitol?
Of course I've talked to the president.
All three?
Of course I've talked to the president. I've been clear about that. I talk to him all the time. This is not about me, Mr. Chairman. I know you want to make it about me. You want to make it about individuals, other individuals. But this is about the lack of a proper security presence that day. That's what this committee, if this committee is going to do something that's worthwhile, that's what they should be investigating. Of course I talked to the president. I talked to him that day. I've been clear about that. I don't recall the number of times. But it's not about me. I know you want to make it about that, but this is about the, why wasn't, how about this? Why wasn't the National Guard here that day, Mr. Chairman?
If I can reclaim my time, I just want...
Have you asked that question? Have you asked the Speaker, why wasn't the National Guard here?
No, my question to you, I'm asking the question to you.
And I gave you the answer.
Did you talk to the president, former president, before, during, or after the attack on the Capitol, or was it all three? The reason why I ask is, you had 84 days since you said you couldn't remember, and you would check. So if you could just clarify the record, was it before, during, or after the attack on the Capitol?
I talked to the president after the attack.
So not before or during?
Right.
Okay, and
And I've been clear about that.
Well,
but here, let me ask you a question. You brought up January 6th.
All right. But my understanding is that you said to a reporter from Politico that you spoke to him during. So it was now after the attack, or you?
During. No, I did not speak to the president during the attack.
So you admitted to speaking to the former president on January 6th, the same day you voted to overturn the election. Facts be damned. And although you've routinely suggested that you're just another member of Congress, speaking with the president, your name comes up again and again in regards to efforts to overturn the election. There is even reporting that back on December 27th, then President Trump spoke with then acting Attorney General Jeffrey Rosen and others to discuss how to reverse Biden's win. An official who was on that call, Richard Donahue, notes you, Mr. Jordan, as a lawmaker who was referenced. This is the same meeting where President Trump told the Justice Department, according to handwritten notes by Mr. Donahue, and I quote, "Just say that the election was corrupt and, quote, leave the rest to me and our congressman." Did you discuss with President Trump a coordinated effort to overturn the results of the election?
I have no idea what you're talking about. I have no idea what that is. Of course not. But you brought up January 6th, Mr. Chairman?
What?
You brought up January 6th, and you said we tried to overturn the results of the election by simply objecting?
No, I just know he said by objecting.
Here's what I know.
Let me say, I don't know.
Okay, well, I hope I get a chance to respond at some point.
I just don't know of another member of Congress who is as deeply enmeshed in all of this as you are, and apparently you're unwilling to give some of the more specific answers to this committee today. I guess, are you willing to tell the Select Committee what you know about events leading up to, during,
I've been clear all along. I've got nothing to hide. I've been straightforward all along.
And just so you know, I mean, I'm looking here. This is a Politico story here. The quote here says, "Look, I definitely spoke to the president that day. I don't recall. I know it was more than once. I just don't recall the times." This is to Olivia Beavers. And you later said that I'm sure that one of the Trump-involved calls took place in the safe room because we were in that room forever. I mean, that's what you...
Yeah, after the thing, that's what I said. But what does this have to do with, what does this have to do with Steve Bannon? What does this have to do with Steve Bannon's contempt?
I'm just,
I thought that's why we were here.
Yeah, well, in your opening, you didn't mention Steve Bannon. Mr. Gates did.
No, I mentioned, yes, I did mention Bannon's name. I mentioned him very first.
About inflation.
No, I did. No, I didn't. I said there are 4 batches of subpoena. The first batch, Bannon, Meadows, Patel, Scavino, first name I mentioned.
Yeah.
You got to go back. I'm sure the reporter can bring up the record.
Yeah, I think what I come away listening to your opening statement is that you're more outraged by people asking questions.
Not at all.
Than police being beaten.
I'm more outraged by the attack on people's First Amendment liberties.
Beaten here on January 6th, and the lives of the people who work for all of us being at risk.
January 6th, Mr. Chairman, can I respond to something?
Yeah, you may.
January 6, 2017, guess who the first person was to object to counting the electoral college results for Mr. Trump? Guess who it was?
It was me.
It was you. Guess which state?
Alabama.
Which state? Alabama, a state President Trump won by 30 points. So you can object to Alabama on January 6, 2017, and for 4 years, you guys can go after President Trump, the Trump-Russia investigation. You can do that for 4 years. In October of 2020, Hillary Clinton said just weeks before the election, she said the 2016 election was stolen from her. So you guys can investigate that, all based on lies, for 4 years. We're not allowed to ask questions for 4 minutes about the 2020 election. We're not allowed to object in Pennsylvania, where they unconstitutionally changed their election law, but you can object to Alabama?
No, well, I'm glad you raised that issue. All right.
Mr. Raskin can object to Florida?
All right, it's my time now. So I raised the issue of Russian interference in our election. I also raised the issue of voter suppression, which was a real concern in that election. I took the action, and I said at the time, it's a symbolic action. I had no senator to join with me, but I wanted to make sure that the issue of voter suppression and potential
So it's okay
Russian,
for you to do it?
excuse me, please. There's a difference here. I did not organize a rally or have meetings to actually plan and undermine an election.
I didn't either.
And the Capitol wasn't attacked before I made my objection.
There's a difference. The difference being where Democrats are allowed, but Republicans
Mr. Jordan,
aren't.
if you don't want to testify here, you're free to leave.
You keep saying all kinds of things. Don't give me a chance to respond.
Seriously, I've given you a chance to respond. You won't let me get a question out.
All right, go ahead.
All right?
Ask your question.
The Capitol wasn't attacked before or after I made my objection. The vice president wasn't rushed to a secure location. His life wasn't threatened. President Obama at the time didn't tweet out a video saying he loved rioters. There wasn't even a vote on my objection. So there's a false equivalency here as an attempt to whitewash what happened on that terrible, terrible day.
I'm not trying to
I was the
whitewash
last person off the floor on January 6th. And I came face to face with these people in the speaker's gallery. And I will tell you, if you want me to describe what evil looks like, it's looking to those faces, those people who, while 3 police officers were in front of the door trying to protect all of us, they were smashing the windows open to get at people. And so, the notion that there's all this outrage today over people asking questions, and there's not outrage over the fact that the police, the Capitol Police, who are here to protect us and who do protect us every day, were beaten. People lost their lives. Others' lives were threatened. The fact that somehow we asking questions about trying to figure out why did this happen, who is responsible, that somehow that is a bad thing. Give me a break. Give me a break. I mean, one of you mentioned political theater. This is a political theater, I don't know what is, but let me just say one of the most genuine statements that I have heard uttered in the Capitol was by Vice Chair Cheney, who, to her credit, is embracing the truth and asking her Republican colleagues to join with her in making sure that the questions are answered in a way so the American people know what happened, so it never, ever, ever happens again. All of us are concerned about the future of our democracy in the aftermath of what happened. We don't ever want to see that happen again. So that's what this is all about. So we could talk about inflation, we could talk about the border, you could talk about whatever you want to talk about. Fine. You're at the Rules Committee, you could talk about whatever the hell you want to talk about. But the bottom line is, I think what we're doing here today is absolutely necessary.
Can I respond?
You may.
I'm not trying to whitewash anything. Republicans have been consistent. We have condemned violence every stinking time it happened. We condemned it on January 6th, and 600 people are being prosecuted and held accountable for what they did wrong, as well they should be. But it would have been nice if you guys would have condemned the violence in the summer of 2020, instead of making statements like my colleague just read. It would have been nice, instead of the Vice President of the United States raising money to bail rioters out of jail, it would have been nice if you'd have done that. No. This double standard, you guys get to say all the things you did about Trump for 4 years. You get to have the summer of 2020 and call it peaceful protest. We condemn violence every single time. It'd have been nice if you guys had done the same. I am so sick of the double standard. Americans are so sick of the double standard.
Well, I think many of us did condemn it. I condemn violence wherever it may occur. But, let me just say this. You can yell and scream as much as you want. The bottom line is,
no, I'm not yelling and screaming. I'm reflecting where the American people are. They've had it with the double standard.
The American people saw.
You're allowed to object. We're not.
No, you could object. That's not the issue. Is not whether or not you raised an objection, Mr. Jordan. The issue is what transpired that day. The issue is that after all,
we had nothing to do with that.
After we'll see what the investigation leads. But after all of this time, still, you cannot say those 5 words that the election was not stolen. With that, I happy to yield to the gentleman from Oklahoma.